Well, hello again. This is Ralph with Stroke Warrior Radio, another stroke survivor story interview. As you know, the purpose of talking with stroke survivors is for them to share their experiences with their stroke and especially their recovery. Um, talking to other stroke survivors has helped me so much with valuable information, willingness, and motivation. So that's why we share this. Let's get started with our guest today. I'm gonna butcher your name. I know it's Kevin Nakawatase.
Nakawatase. Close.
Nakawatase.
Yeah, correct.
I was almost there. I'm so good with names, but not this time.
All
And
good.
you're
All good.
and you're a stroke survivor, stroke advocate, and fast forward summits, right?
I am correct.
Okay. Well, let's get started and talk about your stroke a little bit. When was your stroke?
10 years ago, Christmas Eve it started. I didn't have the typical symptoms. Well, I was getting ready for Christmas Eve dinner with my in-laws, and I felt a sore arm. I was wrapping gifts in the middle of the afternoon, felt sore arm, didn't think much of it. We headed over to the in-laws, and as I was heading over, I felt started getting really hot. So it was like it was the middle of, and it was December winter. It was probably like -20 out in I'm in Canada, so Canadian winters.
Yeah.
It was pretty cold for one of our winters, and I started taking my coat off as I got up to the porch and front door of my in-laws' place, and I just didn't feel good. So everyone told me I looked like hell and I should get to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, but I didn't look like a typical stroke person. I didn't have cognitive. I didn't have the droopy face, all the stuff that most people associate with stroke. I didn't have that. But excuse me, I went to the hospital and it was kind of empty. And I told the lady I had a sore arm. So for an hour and a half, I did ECG and everything related to a heart attack because I said sore arm, left side, heart attack. So we did all the testing from that standpoint. And then everything was fine. I met the doctor. He saw my ECG. So you got nothing wrong with your heart. I said, I don't think it is my heart because I feel good. We're in the middle of I was sitting in the recovery area and the doctor was talking to my wife and my heart rate spiked he was about to send me home, but it spiked to 220 over 120. And immediately he knew obviously there's something wrong when you're at 220. And I ended up then getting another test done, and the doctor thought I might have a stroke, but I need to get tested. Sure enough, I got tested. The X-rays were done, and all that, and they found a clot on the
Hmm.
right side of my brain. And sure enough, I had a stroke. Got sent over to another hospital, which in Toronto we have a specialty hospital for brain for neuro, and they're a very good hospital. So I went over there. I obviously missed the window to get the needle that you can take to
Yeah.
get rid of the clot. So I missed all that. I go into the hospital, sent into ICU, and then Christmas morning, I finally met a doctor, and he said to me, this is gonna get worse than it already is. And I said, how can it get worse? I'm lying in a hospital on Christmas Day, and he says, you're gonna become paralyzed. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, your whole left side's gonna start defunctioning because where the clot was, it was connected to a lot of the movement, the communication skills that we have
Right.
from our brain to our body. And that's what ended up happening. I lost all functionality. I was in a wheelchair for 30 days. I remained in a rehab hospital for 30 days. I learned a lot in terms of just trying to get better. And I'm probably like yourself, Rob. We're very ambitious and we don't take no for an answer. So the one thing that ended up happening, I just kept pushing for more rehab. And that's what ended up happening. For 30 days, I was there. I fortunately, when I started recovering to a level, but I still need a lot more. I did an outpatient for another year and a half. And in Canada, we have a pretty good healthcare system. So it didn't cost me anything for rehab. Maybe typical, not typical, what you guys have to go through in the States. You don't have good healthcare, it's really tough. So I was very fortunate to go through all that. And by doing that, my recovery became better. And I know when I was in New York meeting people when we did our event, a lot of people did not think I had a stroke because I looked so normal, if you want to
Yeah.
call it being normal. I guess I
Yeah.
don't have the afflictions that I saw a lot of people have when I met other stroke survivors. And for that, I'm very grateful. But I had to put in a lot of hard work. And
Yeah.
if I leave any message with people, you got to put in the time. And it's unfortunate, but we're like athletes. I'm a sports guy. We're like athletes. Athletes get hurt, they break a leg, whatever, break an arm. You have to go through rehab in order for you to get back to play at the level you played at. Now we'll never get back to the level we were at, but we want to get as close as possible. And that means putting in the time and putting in the effort. So that's my message. And that's what I did for myself because, as I said, I was into sports. I coached a lot and it helped because I'm at a point now today where 10 years later, I'm pretty normal in most essences. My wife might say something different, but in terms of my body physicality, I still have small issues with my hand and my walking. And it's just very small. They're minute. I look like I limp every now and then because my muscles are still very tight. So they haven't loosened up. I still work with trainers now and then. And, I still get advice. I did yoga. I did everything I could. Spent a lot of money too, because once my healthcare, not my healthcare, but my outpatient rehab ended, I had to then look for everything on my own. And
Yeah.
that was sort of the kind of tipping point to what you had mentioned earlier about the summits, and that is part of the reason is I see everybody I've talked to, rehab has been one of the things that has been taken away from us. Unless you're a millionaire or a billionaire or a professional athlete, you don't get the care that you really need. And for the caregivers and the people they support, you're kind of trying to figure it all out. And 10 years ago, there wasn't the internet like we have now. There was so much internet information. And then I highly recommend people go in and find a trainer or go through a rehab hospital, see if they have videos, because you still need to continue it. It's never going to end for you and I or anyone else that has a stroke. It's a continual battle until basically, the good Lord takes us away. That's when it ends. And unfortunately, that's just part of our body. But on a normal basis, people are working out all the time just to lose weight or, feel healthier, feel stronger. So we're in the same boat, except that we don't have an option. If we want to get better, we really have to do these things. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's basically what's happened. And for me, the 10 years has gone really quickly. I know you and I are almost close in terms of our anniversaries of how long we've been afflicted.
Yeah,
But,
10 months.
yeah. And the only thing for me, the positive of all of it is you get to meet some really good people. I met some great people in my rehab center. They just got a new facility here in Toronto. And, and then with the summits we're doing, I've got to meet some really nice people because we're all in the same community. And, it's not one we signed up for, but it's the one we're kind of put into right now. And, you either can run with it or you kind of have to back away from. That's up to you. That's up to the individual.
Yeah. I'm interested in, you mentioned about the difference in our healthcare systems. A lot of us in the States are told this is good as it's going to get. There's, you're going to be in a wheelchair. You might consider going into a home, all kinds of stuff like that. There are limitations on physical therapy, although I've been very lucky and I still go to physical therapy and it's all covered. And I'm not sure why I keep getting it, but I do. But how did you feel about the recovery early on? With a therapist, or they called physios there or whatever? I know
Yeah.
England are called something else. How did you feel about the original recovery? You
Well,
mentioned something about you knew you had to work harder.
yeah, we use the term PT and OT,
Okay, so do
physiotherapist and
we.
occupational therapist. So it's the same. The big difference you asked about Canada and America, ours is free healthcare. So when I go into an outpatient, it's covered by my government. But like you guys, it's very limited in the hours. I actually, you talk about a small world. One of my outpatient physiotherapists is my neighbor down the street, and we didn't know that until I actually met with him on my first day. And I
Wow.
told him because you're taking my information, my address, and he looked at me. He goes, "You don't live on that street." I said, "Yeah, I do." And it's a small world. And he cheated the system in a way. And I know we're taping all this, but he kept telling me, he kept telling his boss, and I'm making good progress. We need to keep him in. So he got me extended a year, which was great. The big difference and what you're talking about, when I went in, there was in Canada, we don't tend to use a lot of technology, medical device products. We're very physical oriented, like working out, like in a gym type of deal. The only thing I had was I had the treadmill and I had the the bicycle machine that we could use, and they were the only things really that hospital had. I seen other people that use and we had a few of them at our event. There's a lot of people with these new devices, and I kind of wish I had them, because again, I don't know what my recovery would have been quicker and all that. And the unfortunate part, as you said, the rehab is, you guys, I think, is 3 months. It's shut down, and I kind of hate, and I hate to use that word, but I kind of hate when people kind of tell me what I can and can't do. It's sort of one of my full pause. And when a therapist had told me the same thing, they said after the first year, you're probably not going to notice a lot of difference. They told me 1 year. After the year, kind of consider that's where you're going to be. That's your peak. And I said to my therapist, and it's not the gentleman that I was working with, it's the one in the inpatient. I said, we'll see, because you don't know me well enough to know that I'm determined to get back. I played hockey year round, played baseball, golf. I did a lot of sports. That was my life. And the unfortunate part is, yeah, I lost a lot of that ability over the course of the time, and I've had to give up playing ice hockey now because I had to learn to skate again, and it didn't come out very well. So golf is really the only thing I can still play, but not very well. But yeah, it's tough. And I have a friend right now in Toronto, and he's going through the same thing. He's been cut off, and he's been told that his arm will never get better. Don't bother. And
Yeah.
it's kind of sad.
Yeah. Well, it is really sad because, for in my case, I mean, 6.5 years I was on a cane, I was on a walker, whatever, and doing physical therapy, but it was like put me on a bike and walk away, that kind of thing. And after that, it was like all of a sudden I've got this remarkable, in my mind, recovery going on. I don't use a cane anymore, and I can run on a treadmill and everything, so they take away the hope.
I think part of it, you're right. They do take away the hope. I think part of it is their frustrations. They don't believe they can help us anymore. So that's where it shuts off. I think even if you go into a gym with a trainer in general, and there are trainers who will just stop working with you because they don't believe you can get bigger, better, or whatever. And I think in our mindset, we look at the world in a negative place. That's all we see. But the negativity is from the fact that we're told a lot of times you can't do stuff, and we accept that fact. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, when you're in our position as a stroke survivor, we don't have options, but our brain is telling us that. And there's nothing worse than telling your mother, your father, your spouse, or whoever that your partner, your son, your daughter isn't going to get any better. And they believe that because they're the experts. The
Yeah.
doctors are the experts, the therapists are the experts. We're not. And that's sort of the problem. And then those that got cognitive, it makes it even worse because their body's trying to do stuff, but the mind can't verbalize it. And that becomes even worse because, I don't know how bad cognitive, I didn't get any. And if they had told me that, and they told my wife that, and she would stop helping me because okay, this is the way he's gonna be like not a vegetable, but he's gonna be very limited in his movement and all these things. But fortunately, they didn't tell me that. The positive I got out of it, all the physiotherapists I worked with, both in and outpatient, because I was younger and because I was ambitious, they gave me more hours. In Canada, it's generally about 2 to 3 hours a day. I was getting up to 5. I demanded it in some aspects. And then some of the therapists had nothing to do. So I said, can you give me some hours? Give me an hour. Let's go work on something. And they were happy to. And I became a guinea pig as well. And it's kind of funny because I was willing to try stuff. I'm sure you probably saw, and I'm sure everyone, your listeners all saw, there are people in there that are they can't, they are like a vegetable because cognitively they can't do the functions quite
Yeah.
needed to get better. And as you get older, that makes it worse. And in real life, it makes it worse because we've gone through our parents. if they're still around, and see some of them at an age when they're in their 80s and 90s now that they can't do certain things, like even feed themselves. It makes
Right,
it difficult. And that's
right.
sort of the things that I don't like about people telling me what to do, but unfortunately, they're the professionals, and people will take that as their word. Okay, you can't
Yeah.
help the guy.
Was that the most difficult thing you dealt with, or was there more?
No, I think for me, I was very lucky in terms of my journey through this whole process up to today. Very supportive family. I had a lot of people come visit me at the hospital, and I saw people that get no visitors. So from the moment you're in that hospital and you're sitting around alone, you're lost. And unless you have people come to see you, to cheer you on, to push you to move forward, it can get very difficult because you sit there in a chair and you're wondering what the hell is next. Am I going to get better? Again, back in 10 years ago, as there wasn't a lot of TikTok, there wasn't a lot of Instagram. So there is a lot of inspirational stuff that I've seen. Even in the last month and a half, I've seen so many videos and that just watching people. I'm happy for that. But that's watching. The whole gamut, as I said earlier, is we need to go out and do it. And it's hard. But you
Yeah,
got to motivate yourself and push yourself. Some way, somehow, you've got to find that inner strength just to keep going. And that's the biggest thing for me. And answer your question, the only difficulty I had is I think the way the government has set it up, that okay, if the physiotherapist and doctor say that's it, they'll cut you off. And
yeah,
I don't believe that's right. I truly believe you need a third party outside of the parties involved to make this. It's like almost going to court. You need a judge. Unfortunately, our therapists and our doctors sometimes can be judge and jury. And and I get it. They see so many people, like, in a year, they see thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And I get it. There's not a lot of hope. But everyone is in a different individual. And that is the one thing that I learned from my experiences. That they found I was a different individual. So I was treated differently. I didn't go through a regular program. They actually created programs for me during my time, the year and a half I was at my hospital. So I really enjoyed that part. They were willing to take a chance and risk certain things just to see if I could get better. And it did. It really did help because I got to try more modern-esque exercises.
well, I think that's an important thing that I didn't learn early on, and I think you were lucky enough to learn early on, is the importance of self-advocacy.
Yep,
Because a lot of us don't do that. We don't know anything. We don't know other stroke survivors, that kind of thing. And then once you get that community, you become more self-aware and create your own self-advocacy to
yeah,
do better. I think that's
absolutely.
real important.
Mhm.
Yeah. How did you learn to overcome some of your adversities? I mean, was it a mindset, a caregiver, family member, or other support?
I think a lot of it is seeing that a lot of the friends. I mean, one of my friends wrote on my Facebook account that if anyone's getting a stroke, we know you're the best guy to get it because we know you can get through the whole adversity. Now, I can look at it as a positive negative, but I look at it as a very true positive that, yeah, I mean, you don't wish this upon anybody. A stroke is so bad. But no, I learned to push myself too, but I coached a lot. And when you're coaching kids, high school kids, young kids, part of the coaching is trying to make your players better. In my work life, as a manager, director, I worked with people that reported into me and I wanted them to do better. So a lot of the philosophies you'll hear is if you expect your kids to do XYZ, you should be doing the exact same. You lead by example. And I kind of taken that philosophy is that, sure, if I'm going to lead by example, I'm going to have to, the only person I'm leading an example to is myself, but I need to push myself to be better. I really wanted, honestly, Ralph, I thought I'd be playing hockey and baseball in May for the summer season. I said, what do I have to do? What exercises? Give me a couple exercises. My arm's just going to get better. And my occupational therapist stood there before I was leaving as an inpatient, said to me, I just love your ambition, but I want you to be real. She was honest with me. So you're not going to be there next in the summer. I want you to realize that you're going to be very disappointed. You are not going to be playing sports in the summer. I said, what do you mean? I did try golfing. I golfed a little bit and I played baseball, but I was horrible. I was like, in a 50-year-old body, and I was playing like a 2-year-old. And that was the hard part because, I'm the kind of guy in sports. I'm hard on myself and I have high expectations for myself. So, you had to learn disappointment was going to come very readily. And, you see it, I see it in people. Disappointment is something you have to learn to accept, but not make it the be all to end all. At the beginning, it's the acceptance. Hey, okay, I'm not gonna get there, but this is where you set your goals and parameters to go higher. To prove people wrong. That
Yeah.
you'll never get better. No, you have to prove, but it's a mindset. It's a big mindset, and unfortunate stroke survivors. Cognitive is our biggest problem. And I don't know about you, what you went through in cognitive, but I was fortunate I didn't. But if you have it, it makes it even twice as hard because the mind is still not wholly able to
Yeah.
generate the information to do that.
Yeah, I did go through some of that for a while.
Yeah,
Um, what, what, two questions in one.
sure.
What did you learn from your experience that made your recovery even better than it would be? And what did you learn about yourself?
Wow, these are my interview questions when I do
Ah,
interviews at work. What did I learn about myself? That no matter what kind of stuff is thrown at you, I always believed I could fight through battles. And I think for me, the big thing was getting through the battles and trying to just be successful. I think it's always been my mantra is to keep pushing forward, whether at work, whether in sports, whether coach, socially. You always want to get better. Every day is just another step better. And that was, the whole push on myself. And that's, one of the things I kind of really learned about me that I really had it in me to get there. When you have the stroke at 50, you were kind of in midlife crisis mode now. You're facing retirement down the road and you're kind of facing life as, okay, we're going to take it easy. I had to become a 20-year-old again because realistically, you and I are close in age. I'm not trying to age us, but
yeah,
the whole thing about age is as we get older, we're not supposed to get better. We're supposed to kind of become fluffier, right? In who we are. But you and I had to go through it. And I'm not saying just only you and I, but anyone else. You have to rejig your body to become a 20-year-old again. I was going to the gym at the beginning, doing workouts and everything. I never went to the gym in my life. And then all of a sudden now I'm 50. I have to go back in the gym and I'm sitting around a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds who are pumping weights like, it was nothing. And here I could barely walk on a treadmill. And that was sort of like, oh man, but you don't want to embarrass yourself. So
yeah,
then you have to kind of, okay, I'm going to do this right. And I'm going to make myself look good. So yeah, that was sort of the biggest thing that I kind of learned about myself. What was your other question? Sorry.
what did you learn from your experience that made your recovery better?
I think knowing who your friends and family are, I think it's an important aspect. We talk about it all the time. The support, support, support. Heart and stroke, everyone talk about support. And without it, you're not going to there's no motivation sometimes because you're not only doing it for yourself, you have to do it for family, friends, and everyone that came to visit me my first 30 days. They were very shocked. One, because the vision of a stroke person when you first meet someone is that, they have, the droopy face, the cognitive. The only thing that shocked them was sitting in a wheelchair. And then I started talking, and you're your old self. Like I'm in sales, so I talk a lot, right? So they kind of got that, and they said, "You don't seem." They expected a scary vision of what we see on TV, and there's nothing wrong with it. I just say everyone has, when they get afflicted with a stroke, have seen it in so many different aspects. And for my friends, it was that they just started cheering me on and said, "Well, it's not so bad, is it?" And I said, "No, I'm compared to all the other people in the room in the hospital, I'm I'm pretty good. I'm looking
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
like in terms of what I have." So having that was the biggest thing to know who your friends are, to talk with them. One of the things that's come out of all this as well, I've had a few other friends with strokes, heart issues, and they said, if you can get sick, if you can have this, then I need to fix me. So people were going to get for medical tests. The ones that had strokes, I was giving advice to. Friends were calling me. So I think my journey in the end of it all, Ralph, is, and it continues into this Fast Forward Summit, is I guess if the man upstairs wanted me to have this, it was because he believed I could take advantage of the situation, recover from it, but also be an advocate for it. And it's something I see that now in the crossroads. It's taken me almost 10 years to do that, but I think
Yeah.
that's what's become of all this. But we don't learn everything overnight. So, sometimes you don't see things until, staring in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Slapping you in the face.
Yeah, literally.
How's your recovery today?
I'm happy with it. I mean, yeah, the small frustration in my arm, but I still do exercises every night. I won't stop until I'm dead, literally, because I truly believe for two reasons. One, I want to continue to maintain a health. I'm not in the best shape, never was, but now I'm trying to get into better shape. And generally, as I said to you earlier, once you get into your 50s and 60s, you kind of just become fluffier and don't worry about it. Well, I'm going to figure by the time I hit 80, I'm going to be in probably the best shape of my life because all this work and all this stuff has helped me to stay in better shape. And I do a lot of stretching. So my body is still, in a good place where I won't stiffen up and I won't, the bad backs my friends are suffering, knock on wood, I never have to, but I haven't because I've had to do so much strength, core strength. My
Yeah.
back is really strong right now. So one thing I learned is having the stroke had some positive impacts on my life in general. So that's what you
Yeah.
try to make of it.
That's kind of the phrase that I use. It's been the most difficult thing in my life that I've had to do, but it's been the most rewarding
Absolutely. I
because
totally agree with that.
I've learned so much about myself and how to take care of myself from here on out.
Yeah,
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
sure.
Sum up your message to our listeners about what we didn't know then that we know now.
Oh, wow. So what I didn't know then, do I know now? As the world gets better and as technology gets better, things like AI are coming into place. There's even more hope of getting better because there's so much more for people. 10 years ago, when you and I turned back the clock, we only had, it's something I guess we hear from our grandparents and all that, they had to walk 100 miles to school every day. Now you can transport, you can drive, you can do all these things. I think it's the same in this situation we're in. Every year, I read a lot about companies building and developing. We're not out of the woods with stroke. There's no cure for it, but I believe that they're trying to make it as comfortable. So people like the Heart and Stroke, March of Dimes here in Canada, they're all doing their jobs in the R&D. Can they do more? That's sort of a difficult question for me because I always think people can do more.
Yeah.
It's nothing that you can't hold. None of them should be standing. We should not be standing still. So I believe there's still a lot more hope. The unfortunate part is having everyone buy into that hope. And I'm not talking about the survivors, I'm talking about the people we depend on. The organizations, the associations, the government, especially. The government doesn't believe in it. They still have a pact to here, XYZ amount of money for rehab, see you later. And it's like, okay. And, I spent a lot of money rehabbing too, but I fortunately had money saved up. But I look at people that don't, and it's a difficult choice because you now have to pay for you're basically paying for your health in
Yeah.
your own pocket. And if you don't have it, it's a tough part. Like I'm still on meds. My wife has a great plan at her hospital she works at, so I don't pay for meds, but I need a lot.
Yeah.
I'm eating like 6 different meds for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, my mind is covered through my wife's work. But I know a lot of people. You read stories, you see stories, and that is, this is where the government's got to step in, and that's they're part of the learning curve that you asked about. I
Yeah.
think and the advocacy that I want to do is for that because it's not only about the community getting tighter, but the community needs to kind of knock on the door of their government and say, look, here. And the other part I want is get private sector. I think there's a lot more private sector look at all the medical device companies and hospitals, the kind of money they're making, and it's all in R&D, but they could dump a percentage over to the rehab and look at what rehab would make people better. And that's where I think we need to just focus on. And that's hopefully answers the question you asked.
Yeah, it does. What's your final message to our listeners today?
Don't give up. I don't care what you've been told. I don't care what you see. I don't care what you hear. You can't stop, because I think you and I are prime examples. We're older. I saw in New York some 20-year-olds, and they're just starting their life, that had strokes. And if they gave up now, they're going to live the next 70 years of their life doing, being kind of still. And you and I, fortunately, we led a half decent life up to the point of, but we still want another 20, 30 years trying to be as normal as possible. Don't give up. And if you are, call me, call you. I'd be happy to, I'll give you hell. I have no problems. I would not in a bad way, but I would tell you, you can't give up. And the caregivers too. I mean, those that are listening, you have to continue to, you got to do the tough love. You want your, you're not going to be here for the rest of your life. You can't babysit them forever. And it's not that you don't want to, it's just that they need to understand that life isn't over. We just got to push forward and figure out what's the best situation for you. Don't listen to all the potentials and all that. You and your side, your heart, your mind, figure out what's best for you. Because I went my path, you've gone yours, and here we are today. And I tell your listeners, don't give up, because if they need to hear it from me and you, I'm happy to take a call. And I'll sit down and say to you, no, you can't. This is, mental health is caused by the fact that we believe there's no help, there's no recovery, and you feel lost. And I'm happy to help people at any cost. My friends will tell you that. I'm a straight shooter. I tell like it is, and people might not like it, but you have to understand, I don't approve of the fact they're told they can't do anything, because I feel like when every therapist that says that, so you shouldn't be in this job, you must hate your job. You're ever going to tell someone it's over, it's done? You can't tell people that. It's not false hope. There's always recovery. 10 years. I've recovered 10 years later. So have you. I know we both have. Yes. 10 years later, we're recovering. It may not be gigantic, but it's there. Like, there's small things that I've noticed in my body that I'm doing better. And it's taken me 10 years, but that's the way it is. So number one, don't give up. 3 words.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Kevin, for your time today and willingness to share. Please check out Kevin at www.knsct.com.
Yeah. And if I can do one quick plug, we're doing summits for the reason of one reason and one reason only. People need to get together more. We did a New York one back in April. It was phenomenal. Not because I ran it with my partner, but because it was just good seeing people get together. They've been chatting so much. COVID did a lot of damage in terms of people interacting, getting together. We had people, and I'll be honest with you, that didn't want to come because they're still afraid to travel. They're still scared to travel. And the big thing is, don't be afraid. You need to get the support, get out there and network. We're doing LA next month, the end of June, and we'll be in the Panbelt of Orlando, South Carolina in October. And we plan to do one in Canada, in Toronto, where I live, soon as well. So if you guys can, anyone's listening to this, go into the website, knsct.com, and it has all the registrations and pictures of the ones we just did.
We'll also be sharing that on our website as
Ralph,
well.
Actually, Ralph's coming out to it. He's going to be one of our table hosts, and it is for realistically, we're only wanting the survivors and the caregivers, because it's your chance to interact amongst each other without listening to therapists and doctors, give their story. You guys have heard enough from them, and I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. It's just that we see them so much, but it's good to see friends in the community. And what I saw in New York was just so touching. Just seeing people get together. And Ralph, you'll experience that in LA as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Kevin, and I hope you have a great day and week.
Yeah. Happy holidays, and we'll look forward to talking to you and meeting you next month.
Yep. All right. Thanks again for listening to Stroke Warrior Radio. I'm talking with Kevin. Here we go again. I'm going to try and
Smith. Just say Smith.
Nakawatase. right?
Nakawatase. All the A's are short.
Okay, okay. I'll leave it at that. And
Kevin's good.
yeah, Kevin's with Fast Forward, and that's at knsct.com. Tell us what Fast Forward is, Kevin.
So, back in March of last year, I hooked up with my business partner, Maddie. She's Maddie Stroke of Luck if you go into Instagram. She had a stroke at 23 through minor operation she was going through, and she created pages, written 2 books, has spoken at the WHO convention in Vienna, I think it was earlier last year. She's done a lot. Now, this is a person like me who is very hard on ourselves about how we're going through. She wanted to recover. She had plans in life. It got sidetracked, and I admired what she had done. So her and I started talking on her community page and Instagram. But she was coming to Toronto because the WSO had their biggest stroke event in Toronto. So we met up, talked, and we basically came to the same conclusion that the one problem we see is there's not enough community things. Now, part of the problem isn't that there isn't any. The part was that with COVID, there were a lot of restrictions on who could gather, where you can gather, and it kind of filtered through now. Even some hospitals still wear masks and all that with people, and rightly so. But we felt there just needed to be more interconnection. The internet is great and it's fine, but it comes to a point that, Ralph, I'm going to meet you next month. When I want to meet you, I want to shake your hand. I want to say hi to you and share our stories even further to see, what kind of person you really are. The computer is what it is. Well,
Yeah.
we wanted to bring people together. So Maddie and I did that. We brought together in New York last month, and we had almost 100 people, including a few sponsors that provided products. The whole idea is just a gathering. It's a meet and greet, I call it. We set up round tables hosted by, you're going to be hosting one. And for basically 3 hours, roughly, you'll be just hosting groups of different people and sharing stories, just talking about your experiences. So what you just did, through interviews and that with me, that's all it's about. It's just sharing stories, seeing each other, and realize you're not the only one in this situation. Everyone's allowed to bring caregivers if they want, and the whole idea is for them to do that. We actually take the caregivers for an hour away from them, and they have their own little session for 1 hour. And the big thing is, it's their bitch session. I sat through theirs, and I saw people crying. I saw people yelling, not in a bad way, but yelling because they're so upset and frustrated by either our healthcare system or they're frustrated with their life. And rightly so, because as I say to everyone, this is not something we signed up for. And there is
Yeah.
no book on how to be a good caregiver. So they got to share their stories without their support people, their survivors, because we didn't want them to make their survivors feel worse. It's worse enough that they already feel bad that they've had to, make people change their lives. I saw mothers with daughters, I saw husbands with wives, wives with husbands, sisters with brothers. It was a mix. And the one
Yeah.
thing that came out of it was the idea is that they got to meet people. They made new friends. They were friends already on Maddie's community page, but now they became personal friends. And they all live near each other because we're doing it in sections of the states.
Yeah.
So like California is our next one at the end of next month. So people come in from Sacramento, Padoma, all the different states. But it's people meeting people is the whole idea. I mean, before we all got afflicted by a stroke, we're social people. We got to go run around. Now we're kind of limited, and some people it is. My only one advice to everyone that's listening that wants to sign up, yes, you're going to be very fearful of making that first step, but you eventually got to do it. I'm hoping you make it at our event where you're going to come and see people. The location is great. It's in the heart of downtown LA. Yes, you'll probably need to bring someone with you, but we want you to because your caregiver needs to have support as well as other people. So
Yeah.
that's the advocacy because we want to build up this strong community. And in due time, we want to go to the governments. We want to go to the private sector. We want to go to the big pharma companies and all and get them to support the people and just say, hey, look, okay, we understand. We need to give you guys more money. Rehab is such a bad thing in terms of we're not getting enough. And again, something you and I alluded to earlier is that, some people are told you're not going to get any better. Why should we give you any more money? And that's sort of the wrong thing to say. And that sends a wrong message. But at the same time, this is where we have to fight for, things, and advocacy is the only way. And I heard some great stories from people, not great stories in terms of, what they had to do. There's a lady in Nigeria had to build her own building out of her own hands. She had no money from her government because in Nigeria, they have no money. So she just solicited money, found bricks somewhere, and built a building, a rehab center.
Wow.
And that was,
Wow.
and she stood there and talked. She sat and talked. Well, that's part of the reason we're doing this. We really want people to just come out and meet and enjoy time like it was a party, but for the right reason, not the wrong.
Yeah, I found my recovery became so much better when I started talking to other survivors, people that knew what I was going through, that
Right.
shared their resilience and hope with me. And I'm excited about speaking at your stroke summit in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
And it's free
June
to
20th.
attend,
Redo with them.
June 28th, right?
Correct.
And your hotel partners are Westin La Paloma, or not
Oh,
West
Bonaventure.
Bonaventure, yeah.
Yeah, it's about
La Paloma's in Tucson.
it's about an 8 to 10 minute walk if you want to walk. We're trying to get people to do exercise as well. We try to keep it close. We're going to be using the venue's got a food court. So the Grand Central Market where we're using has a food court. So one of the things we're going to do was give out vouchers and people will go down and get their own food. The other at the New York one, we actually catered in, but this place has a little bit of better situation and it's less headaches for me to try to coordinate logistically the type of food so people
Yeah.
can go pick and choose.
And your sponsors are Grand Central Market, of course, where the venue is, Westin, Bonaventure, and El Campa, El Compadre.
El Compadre is a Mexican restaurant. My partner Maddie met at another place, and they were looking in catering. They can't put it all together because they're a very busy restaurant, but they're willing. We're going to have a door prize at the event where they're going to give a couple of vouchers to go eat there. So people that live in the area, it's great. People like you may have to go the night after or whatever. We can figure all that out, but
Yeah,
it's a restaurant that they're happy to donate some gifts because we do have raffle prizes out as well.
cool, very cool. And you have product demonstrations and exercise demonstrations, right?
Yeah. So what's going to happen is what we did is we brought some of the vendors we had. We had like Houston Bionics is already back from before. They'll bring in a product and you can actually, for you or anyone, try out their arm machine that they use, their specialty. So anyone that wants to sponsor, you give me a shout on my web. We're still looking for a few more, and they'll get to demo the product. Your sponsorship will be allowed to demo your product. A lot of it is done, through therapists and doctors. Again, if they don't have that product, you're not going to know about it unless you do a full search. And even then, a lot of the demos have to be in person. They
Yeah,
cannot be like over the internet. So this is a good way to try them out. And then the exercises, I'm trying to get a rehab center to come in, either sponsor or join us. I had Burke Rehab out of New York came in. They sent a girl and she did some small exercise. So what the idea of this is to just show you things to take home. And then that way you can continue to work on small things. And then hopefully if you like what Burke's done or any of the rehab centers, you go back and get money to get the rehab. But that's something you and I have already crossed paths with in terms
yeah.
of cash. Is the government or your insurance provider may not. So it may become out of pocket or you have to find a way to facilitate that. But as long as you keep learning, and the internet's got some great stuff, but again, I think in person becomes a little better because that's all we did. We didn't, once we had a stroke, we didn't go home and then sit in a bed and then, some therapist came online and said, here's the exercise. We actually got to go to a room and physically do it. So I want the same thing for people as well.
Another one of your partners that I have to mention because it's a mutual friend to its through Stroke Awareness Oregon. Stroke Onward is another one of your partners. Tell me about that relationship.
Well, they were hosting a round table. So we work with Flannery. Flannery and I and Maddie met in Toronto. And that was kind of weird because there weren't many stroke survivors at the event. They're all mostly doctors and hospitals and things. And that was one of the things too. We were talking about, like, we've only bumped in about a half a dozen stroke survivors, but it wasn't for stroke survivors. And that was where we decided we need to have an event for stroke survivors. not for all the hospitals and all that. You know, they get to go. I get the speeches and all the R&D, but the survivors that were there, we talked, and they go, why aren't there more survivor stuff? And so that's what we put together. And Flannery was there. We talked, and she and I have and Maddie put together a partnership. We advertised for each other, and she actually was supposed to speak at the event, and I'm trying to get her to come to the one in LA. She unfortunately came up with an ailment while in New York, ready to, because she doesn't live in New York either.
Yeah.
So we unfortunately didn't get to meet her at the event, but yeah, they just hired a new CEO, so they've got a lot of game plans. And Stroke Onward's a great company,
Yes.
one that's very big on advocating for the community and trying to help them move forward. So we're very fortunate enough that we met Flannery and they've agreed to partner with us.
That's fantastic. I love Stroke Onward. They're on our website as well.
Yeah.
Any other details we need to share about the registration?
No, just register. You'll get a communication from me within a day. Just welcome you to it. If you need a hotel room, let me know. We're just working out the hotel packages at the Westin. No, anything else? It's just any questions you have. It's all on the registration. When did you have your stroke? Just to let you know, most of the people are the last 5 years. You and I'm unfortunately, Ralph, we're going to be one of the veterans. I actually had a guy in New York, 26 years as a stroke survivor.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and he still has some afflictions that he's working on, but these are things that, you know, it's good seeing people like that. I mean, not good in the way that you think good, but that he came out. He too was one of these people that, you know, you talk to them and they all were happy to help, but it took a lot because just to get out. But he's, you know, 26 years, he's gone through a lot and he's, you know, he's got more of a regular life going.
Yeah.
The ones that really kind of, you know, it was very touching and sad in some aspects were the young ones. I saw 23, 24-year-old girls with their mothers. And, you know, just to see that, and it was nothing you could really do. Some was through operational, some, you know, they just happened. And like my business partner, Maddie, the same thing. You know, she went through a minor operation that was supposed to be done and in and out. So she goes to bed, she goes under the, you know, under the knife, normal, and wakes up paralyzed. And that is, and it's her affliction was on her strong side. So she's now had to not only learn to do everything again, but she needs to learn how to write with her opposite hand, which is
Yeah.
even worse.
Yeah.
So, and I admire, you know, them for trying, and it's, you know, these are the kind of people I'm fighting for now. Is just, you know, as I said, I'm at an age, I'm in my 60s now, and they're in their 20s. You know, I've lived 3 times their life already. I want them to be able to get to where I'm at an age and, you know, be in a good place in terms of their recovery. And recovery is never stopping. It's just a continuum. Part of the recovery is just meeting people like yourself, being able to talk about it
And they can register where?
right online. If you go into the thing, you can click on any of the tabs. Click on the LA tab, and then there's a place to register, a button, tab to register, and then you fill in all the information. Just it asks for your name, when you had your stroke, cell number. It asks for your email address, any topics you want to see. If you're going
Yeah.
to bring someone, if you need a hotel. So they're all the standard questions if you're going to sign up for an event.
And that's at www.knsct.com.
Correct.
Okay. And they can also look it up on Instagram at,
If you go to Maddie's Stroke of Luck, she has a link there as well. And there's the ad page, the flyer that we have. So you can look at hers. She's got over almost 100,000 followers now in her short time. I think it's 2 years she's been running this whole thing. So, you know, good on her. And that was part of my motivation that she's well connected in the community and she's worked with a lot of numbers like Kessler Hospital, the WHO, you know, all these different people have come to her. She's done a lot of advocacy, a lot of advertising for them. So, you know, you get a chance to meet. She's a celebrity. I'm just a normal guy. She's a celebrity.
well, I appreciate your time, Kevin.
Yep, I
Another
appreciate it, Ralph.
stroke survivor, stroke advocate sharing their story. I'm always grateful.
Yeah,
You have,
I am too.
you have a great week and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep, you too. Thanks, Ralph. We'll see you next month.
Sounds good.
Take care.